My name is Jason Bodine, and I am a fanboy. Not just any fanboy, mind you, I am an OG fanboy. In 1979, at the age of 5, and before the genre even had a name, I wrote my very first fanfic based on the Wonder Woman TV series starring Linda Carter. In the mid-90s, I attended my very first convention. It was a Star Trek convention. A few years later, I went to my very first celebrity meet and greet. And in the late 90s, I was one of the founding members of the Scarecrow and Mrs. King fandom community that's still around today. The point being that in my 47 years, I have been immersed in fandom culture for a long time and have seen a lot of different things through a lot of different fandoms. And in this video, I'm going to discuss with you what I feel is a disturbing shift in paradigm from the way things used to be in the early days of fandom culture versus the way they are today. So stay tuned. Even as late as the early 2000s, when I was most heavily involved with the Scarecrow and Mrs. King fandom, being the fan of a movie, a TV show, or a celebrity was a fun and relatively inexpensive hobby. Sure, things like celebrity meet and greets and conventions were a once-in-a-while luxury, but the price of a single admission ticket got you access to everything once you were inside, and the people were a warm, fun, friendly, open, and welcoming bunch. Not only that, but celebrity access was a lot easier than it is today. Back then, as a fan of Scarecrow and Mrs. King, I published a print newsletter and ran both a website and an online chat room devoted to the show. Setting up an interview or arranging a chat with a cast member was as easy as calling the Screen Actors Guild to get the information for the celebrity's publicist and then playing phone tag with said publicist to set everything up. It was easy and stress-free, and the best part is it didn't cost me or the other fans who were participating in my events a cent, because the celebrities were glad to do that kind of thing for free because it was a fun and interesting way to stay in touch with the fans. Financial difficulties forced me to leave the fandom life for a while, but when I finally returned a couple of years ago, this time through another favorite TV series of mine, Supernatural, the fandom culture that I stepped into was a very, very different place from the one that I left behind. Conventions had become outrageously expensive, and the admission ticket did not cover the cost of everything at the event. To attend a Supernatural convention, from what I understand, cost in the neighborhood of $2,000, and that does not even cover the hotel and travel expenses or food. And then there's celebrity access. It had become a lot harder than it used to be. Whereas I used to be able to get in touch with a celebrity easily, today accessing a celebrity is harder than accessing Mars without a rocket ship. And then there's the fandom culture itself among the fans. It had become elitist, fractured, and quite frankly, toxic. Now, I'll be focusing almost exclusively on the Supernatural fandom in this video. So let me first make it clear that none of what I just said is in any way an indictment of the show's cast or any of its fans. From what I can tell, they are all a friendly, warm bunch of people. But that said, there is a certain amount of elitism among the fans and the cast that comes from years of attending conventions together, and that's understandable. That's only natural. The fans all seem to know each other on a first name basis, and the cast knows the fans from them attending the conventions, and it's hard to get any of them to interact with the new guy who hasn't been there with them. Now, along with that friendliness, there is a lot of fracturedness with the different factions of the fandom, and a lot of toxicity between them that comes from a bunch of infighting over any number of things. So, what caused this paradigm shift, and is there anything to be done about it? Now that I've established that there's been a change in modern fandom culture, what's causing that change? It's easy and it's tempting to place the blame for the elitist, fractured, toxic nature of modern fandom on opinionated jerks and self-important celebrity gatekeepers, and the blame for the expense on corporate greed. But fandom culture has always had its opinionated jerks and its self-important gatekeepers, and convention organizers, like in the case of Supernatural Creation Entertainment, are in the business to make money. But again, that's always been the case. But it's never been like this before. Nor can you blame it on the celebrities. They do get paid for their time at conventions and meet and greets. But again, that's always been the case. And at least in the cases of actors like Jensen Ackles, Jared Padalecki, and Misha Collins, they are genuinely kind, caring, and generous people who use their celebrity to help those less fortunate than themselves. So it isn't celebrity greed either. So what the hell did happen? What changed to make things the way they are now? Well, speaking as someone who's been around fandoms for a good chunk of his life, I think the change can be boiled down to three things that didn't exist in fandom culture before. Or, if they did, not to the degree that they do today. 1. Extortion. 2. Exploitation. And 3. Inexperience. Let's talk about them one by one, and you'll see what I mean. Up first on the list, we have extortion. This is the one that I believe is solely responsible for the elitism in modern fandom culture. As I said earlier, that elitism comes not from snobbery, but from the close ties formed largely from years and years of attending conventions together. That leads to celebrities and fans alike interacting online with the people that they know and trust the most, while newcomers are left out. The thing is, it's easy to get in that close-knit, exclusionary state of mind when the price tag of attending a convention is $2,000 a pop. Of course those fans and the celebrities get to know each other very well, because it's the same people going to the conventions year after year. Not because they're the ones that are interested in attending and the only ones, but because they're the only ones who can afford to go. It can lead, and does lead, to a false notion among celebrities and fans alike that newcomers aren't worth their time and attention. Now, all of this, as the title of this video suggests, is fostered by a culture of extortion. Because that's what a $2,000 price tag is. Extortion, plain and simple. It says, you pay this exorbitant amount or you don't get access. But as much as I believe that companies like Creation Entertainment should give fans access to absolutely everything with a single ticket if they're going to charge that much. The sad fact is they're being extorted too. Not by the celebrities either. I mean, aside from the fact that there's a photo of Jensen Ackles' motion activated toilet in the dictionary next to the phrase, too much money. The three principal cast members of Supernatural are known for their kindness and generosity, running organizations like Random Acts and Always Keep Fighting, just to name two. And they're not going to intentionally bilk people out of their money and leave newcomers feeling left out. That leaves one group and one group only as the extortionists, the booking agents. If my research is accurate, Jensen, Jared, and Misha each use a different booking agency, yet each commands the exact same $50,000 to $100,000 booking fee, which leads me to believe that it's an industry standard fee set by the agencies rather than the actors themselves. The convention companies have no choice but to pay that exorbitant fee and pass on the cost, jacked up of course so that they can turn profit themselves, to the fans. And meanwhile, the booking agents have their celebrity clients convinced that those fees are normal and acceptable. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the first domino to fall in the chain reaction that leads to the elitism present in modern fandom culture. Item number 2 on this list is something that I think is, at the very least, the most major contributing factor to the fracturing and toxic infighting that characterizes modern fandom culture. I am talking, of course, about exploitation. Specifically, exploitation of the fan base by the TV networks. Now, this is something that's a little more complex than the first issue I discussed, because it doesn't happen in every fandom community and not every network is guilty of it. But it is a common and prevalent thing with certain specific networks like the CW in particular and the shows it airs, especially shows like Supernatural. What went on that show during its entire 15-year run and continues to resonate throughout the fandom today, more than a year after the series went off the air, was the simultaneous exploitation of two different demographic groups of the overall fan base for the entertainment of a third demographic. Not to mention the gaslighting of one of those two exploited demographics. The three demographic groups in question are, in order, women, the LGBTQ plus community, and straight men. The first two groups were exploited for the sake of the third, because that third demographic, straight men, were Supernatural's target audience, and remained so even after the show matured enough to realize it had other demographics tuning in. This means that in the beginning, we got Dean Winchester portrayed as an oversexed macho man who treated women as objectified, disposable playthings. As for the LGBTQ plus community, when they were represented at all, they were portrayed in a way that catered to the adolescent straight male fantasy of what manliness is. Gay and bi women, like Charlie, Claire, and Kaya, were always presented as young, hot, and sassy to get straight men's hormones surging. Gay and bi men, on the other hand, were given the exact opposite treatment. They were almost exclusively presented as unattractive, and their sexuality was used as comic relief, something to be laughed at. Now, of course, that didn't stop the show from trying to keep those exploited demographics drawn in. Want to keep the women drooling? Show Sam Winchester without a shirt or Dean riding a mechanical bull. Want to draw in the LGBTQ plus community? Queerbait them with Dr. Sexy and Destiel so text, but never let the characters express it explicitly. And if they do express it explicitly, nip it in the bud before it can go anywhere. Because our target audience is straight men, and that's not manly. That, I guarantee you, my friends, was the thought process of the showrunners and their network overlords. Do you wonder where all the fracturing and toxicity in that particular fandom comes from? I don't, because all that stuff I just said is the majority of what the fighting in that fandom is about. Which brings me to the final item on this list, Inexperience. This is the factor that I feel is the one that ties all the others together, because it is the one that allows those expensive, toxic conditions to bleed into and then thrive within modern fandom culture. It's also arguably the most difficult and complex of the three factors contributing to the paradigm shift in fandom culture to discuss, for the simple reason that there are so many kinds and so many levels of inexperience. In the case of fandoms where this shift is most prevalent, like Supernatural and Doctor Who, the type of inexperience I'm primarily talking about is youthful inexperience on the parts of the actors as well as the fans. Not in terms of how long they've been part of modern fandom culture or how many fandom communities they take part in, but in terms of when these modern fandoms and the shows that spawned them came into being, and how old the people part of them were when they first became involved. That is to say, the cast and the fans of these two shows have been around the scene for a while, long enough for the current set of toxic conditions to become normalized to them, but not long enough to realize that it's ever been any different and that it's okay to not put up with this current status quo. Okay, now, I can hear you all saying, wait a minute, Jason, I can see what you're saying about Supernatural, but the Doctor Who fandom's been around for more than 50 years and they're as toxic as ever. Well, yes and no. Doctor Who and its fandoms are, in many ways, the exception that proves the rule. You see, Doctor Who and its fandom are like Schrodinger's cat, both an old fandom community and a new fandom community, and which it is seen as is dependent on an observer opening the box. So it's true that Doctor Who has been around for more than 50 years and has a lot of older fans. But it's also true that the modern iteration of the series hasn't been around for all that long and was designed to attract a younger audience. Supernatural and the current iteration of Doctor Who both came about in 2005, which is about the time when this paradigm shift started to occur. With only a few exceptions, both shows cast actors who hadn't been around long enough to know it had ever been any different, and, whether it was intentional or not, drew in fans who were primarily in that same age group or a little bit younger, who also didn't know any better. The only difference, really, between the two is that Doctor Who has the added element of trying to keep an older, more experienced fan base happy, while at the same time keeping the younger, more inexperienced audience drawn in. The result, therefore, has only been a more pronounced version of what's going on in the Supernatural fandom. Yet, with its more pronounced toxicity and divisiveness, what's going on in the Doctor Who fandom ironically provides a key to the solution to the problem. If the more inexperienced viewers of these and other shows will look at and pay attention to what the older, more experienced members of the overall fandom community culture are doing. I'll cover that solution in the next segment. So far in this video, I've established that even though TV show fans are still some of the friendliest people you can meet, fandom culture overall has shifted from the friendly, open, relatively inexpensive environment of yesteryear to one that is elitist, divisive, toxic, and outrageously overpriced. I've covered how I believe that extortion by the booking agents, exploitation by the TV networks, and the youthful inexperience of actors and fans alike are the major contributing factors to that change, and I said that the key to the solution can ironically be found by watching what the older fans of one of the most divided, toxic fandoms out there right now, the Doctor Who fandom, are doing. So let's do that now. In the previous segment, I noted that the current iteration of Doctor Who and Supernatural both began in 2005 and said that was about the time the shifts started to occur. Perhaps, though, it would be more accurate to say that that was when the seeds were planted, and that while those seeds sprang up fairly quickly in the Supernatural fandom community, under the watchful care of its showrunners and all the people involved in putting conventions together, they took much longer to sprout in the Doctor Who community. But once they did, they grew fairly quickly into one of the ugliest examples of what I've been discussing here. That's because when Doctor Who burst onto the scene that year, it already had a generation or more of history and canon behind it, and fans who grew up watching the original iteration of the series. The BBC conceived of the new show as a continuation of that series rather than a reboot, and they brought aboard Russell T Davies to helm the ship. During his tenure, Davies managed to write stories that stuck to the original canon while at the same time keeping things new and interesting for a new generation of viewers. Stephen Moffat continued that tradition when he took over as showrunner in 2010. So, by the time the current showrunner, Chris Chibnall, took the helm in 2018, fans of the revived series were well versed in the show's decades-long canon, and they liked it. But, though Chibnall claimed to be a fan of the original series, he proved himself to be more of a writer for the times and began making radical changes to the series. Those changes, in very short order, blew the fandom apart into the ugly mess it is today. Chibnall first upset the apple cart by casting the first female Doctor, which caused a crack in the fandom but wasn't too bad. Things only went from bad to worse when Chibnall used his female Doctor to tell stories that many fans felt were boring, one-dimensional, political, and preachy. But then, finally, the shit hit the proverbial fan when Chibnall did the unthinkable by retconning 5 decades of canon with an episode called The Timeless Children. Suddenly, the BBC announced that Chibnall and his female Doctor were leaving the series, and that the guy who brought the series back in 2005, Russell T Davies, was coming back with complete creative control of the series, and the fandom, doubtful but with a little hope, calmed down some. Now, the BBC never backed down from its support of Chibnall. So, what happened? Well, my friends, I'll tell you. The unhappy fans did the same thing that the video game fans did for Sonic the Hedgehog not too long ago, when they demanded and got a redesign for the character of the movie. They harnessed and used the most effective weapon in the arsenal of any group looking to make a change: the power of the word no. People who'd been fans for years not only stopped watching the show, but stopped buying merchandise, until just about the only fans left were the ones Chibnall was trying to attract, and the BBC realized they weren't enough to sustain the franchise. So they were left with the choice of either listening to the masses or letting their favorite cash cow starve to death. They chose the former. I know that in the cases of Doctor Who and Sonic the Hedgehog, the producers are listening because they were fighting to draw new viewers to a franchise that was still alive with new content. It doesn't matter. The power of the word no doesn't fade just because a TV series is no longer on the air, especially not when fans are still talking about it on every social media platform. People are still buying merchandise, and conventions are still being held. And that word is a weapon the fans of Supernatural and other shows of its ilk need to learn if fandom culture is to become again the friendly, accessible to everybody who wants to participate in it place that it once was. Supernatural fans may not be able to change anything about a series that's already gone off the air, but they can change the nature of their fandom just by saying no. No to the high-priced conventions and the elitism they spawn. No to the fracturing and toxic infighting. And above all, no to the booking agents and TV networks that engender all that negativity in the fandoms just to turn a quick buck. I mean, guys, I love Supernatural, okay? I love the show. I love its characters. I love the fans. And I'm a big fan of all of the actors and the good works they do on and off the screen. I wrote a reboot script for the show, and I would love nothing more than to attend a convention, meet the cast, hear them talk in panels, and have my picture taken with them. I'd love to be able to tell the guys how much the show means to me and show them my script. But speaking as someone who's been a part of fandom culture for more than half of his life, who spent a hell of a lot less to get a hell of a lot more in terms of meeting my favorite celebrities and getting to know other fans, the prices companies like Creation Entertainment are charging in order to meet those insane booking fees mean that I'd not only better be getting access to every single panel, meet and greet, and photo op on the docket, but during those panels, Jensen, Jared, Misha, and company better damn well be on stage doing a choreographed Magic Mike routine as Queen Elizabeth river dances around them while juggling the crown jewels. And there'd better be an after party where I get one-on-one time with each and every one of the stars. Otherwise, it's just not worth that kind of money. In conclusion, it's fair to say I'm a lot of things. I'm a fanboy. I'm a writer and a dreamer. I'm also a realist. I don't expect anybody to watch this video then go get a refund on your convention tickets, nor should you. The cast of your favorite TV show deserves recognition for their good work, and if you've paid good money for tickets, then by all means go and have your good time. Nobody should feel guilty for enjoying themselves. But if you're one of those people who spends the equivalent of buying a small car, including travel and hotel expenses, every time your favorite show has a convention, are you really getting your money's worth when people in other fandoms have gotten that much and more for a lot less money? And if you're one of those fans who only interacts online with a select group of other fans, is it really fair to make newcomers feel excluded when all they want to do is celebrate their love of the show and its cast with you? Finally, should fans be subjected to an environment of sniping and insults every time they get online just because their take on a character, actor, or plotline is different from somebody else's? Or should we, as fans, go out of our way to make the fandom experience open and pleasant for everyone? These are the questions I want people to come away from this video thinking about, because to me, the answers are obvious. Okay, if you've made it this far into the video, I want to thank you for watching. Please take a moment before you go on about your day to give me a like and a subscribe. And until next time, peace.